Well, hello everybody. Welcome to this month's webinar on Flexi, moving to Flexicloud. For those that don't know me, my name is Spencer Kuo. I'm a solutions manager here at Flexi, and here in the Houston office, it is Ugly Sweater Day. So hopefully you guys are in a festive spirit. We're going to be, this is kind of a repeat of a previous webinar we did that was so popular that we figured, hey, we need to do it again for those that couldn't make it to the first one. There are a lot of you guys that are looking at the cloud for good reason. And so we want to give you a little bit of what is FlexiCloud, why it's a good, why you should consider it. And I've brought a couple of guests as well to enlighten everybody on what additional services you may receive and what the process of moving to the cloud is really like. So everybody just sit back and relax, grab your lunch, have your coffee, and stick with us for the next half hour to an hour. So later on, I'll be introducing David and Jason. David is the Cloud Services Manager, and he's responsible for managing, he's almost like your IT, manages your IT department for Flexi in the cloud. And Jason, who many of you probably have worked with in the past, he's going to be the one responsible for managing the conversion and migration. Okay, but we'll visit with them later. All right, so it's December. You know, everybody's kind of so ready for 2020 to be over. You know, with the COVID-19 affecting everybody, and it's still affecting us today. And it's one of the impetuses for people to consider the cloud, and it certainly affects the industries of our customers quite a bit. And although we're ready for 2020 to be over, you know, the experts out there are saying that this pandemic is we're gonna still be affected by it for, you know, for the foreseeable future. These are some recent quotes from Fauci and Bill Gates. These were just within the last maybe week or so. So Dr. Fauci is saying, you know, we're looking at third or fourth quarter of 2021 for things to get back to normal. This is, you know, after the vaccine and everything. And Bill Gates, who's been very active in this type of in you know, pandemic research, and his foundation is saying sometime in first half of 2021 does he think things are going to go back to normal. So even though 2020 is coming to an end, we're still kind of in it. Now, why is that relevant? Well, you know, in the last webinar that we did, we talked about some ideas around boosting resilience when it comes to these types of pandemic situations. And so CIO.com made some recommendations about how you can boost resilience, because we're going to be dealing with this pandemic for months to come. And so if you haven't already started some of these initiatives, you might want to consider these, like moving to the cloud, which we're talking about today, boosting process automation. I mean, who isn't always trying to boost process automation, but it's more magnified now. Scaling your DevOps. This is a good time to kind of turn internally to your internal IT, internal development teams, to kind of, you know, work on yourselves a little bit. So we will assist with that in terms of, you know, when things are in the cloud, you'll have an extension of your DevOps and IT teams with David's team here at Flexi. Fortifying data analytics. This is also kind of like, hey, let's look and turn our resources internally and fortify and improve the analytics that we're doing today even more. And then everything is moving to self-service. You know, people are remote. People are more distributed now than ever before. Very quickly, that has changed. And so leveraging technologies that facilitate a self-service environment. You know, self-service has been around for a long time, but it's just become more extended with the availability of technology and the distribution of work. So being able to submit invoices or submit travel expense or submit journal requests from anywhere becomes much more useful. All right. So what is Flexicloud? So Flexicloud is the full suite of the Flexi financial solution, but instead of on-premise, instead of purchasing the license, it's offered as a service hosted in Microsoft's Azure cloud. Okay, so this is software as a service in the Microsoft Azure cloud. And we selected the Azure cloud for its security and its adoption around the world. And so we're able to leverage a lot of the things that Microsoft Azure provides in those areas. Also, because Microsoft is always developing additional tools for their customers for the cloud. And so we can leverage the development and piggyback off of what Microsoft does. So essentially, you've got data centers throughout the United States, and there's data replication across Microsoft's 4 different sites within the US, which manage things like disaster recovery and business continuity, 99.9% availability, data redundancy and fallover if anything happens, as well as tremendous multiple layers of physical security. So what's the big deal? Well, several years ago when cloud first became a thing and hosting, people were always concerned about security. And rightfully so, and today they are as well. But now you have these large vendors like Microsoft and Amazon who have invested tremendous resources, more resources than any individual company probably would ever invest in these security measures. So for physical security, we're talking about fences and barbed wire and gates and biometrics and all that kind of stuff that, just short of steel cages and attack dogs, right? Things that most companies can't afford to invest in. So the bottom line here is that these cloud vendors like Microsoft are going to be more secure than if you were to have your data in-house. Okay. So for Flexicloud users, they're going to be distributed wherever you guys are, and you connect via the internet to the Azure cloud, where we're going to host the Flexi solution suite in a very secure environment. And then, as I was kind of alluding to, you get the benefit of all of the features of the Azure cloud. So, multi-factor authentication and authorization and audit logs. And a lot. Sorry. Oh. A lot of these are tools that are available to Flexi, and some of these are tools that are available to you. But the point is that there's just a lot of resources that are available because it's Microsoft. Okay, so that's a little bit about what Flexicloud is and some of the kind of features of it. Now we're going to talk about the 6 reasons to consider moving to the cloud. And you guys probably are aware of a lot of this already. So let's just go through these, starting with IT maintenance. And this is probably the biggest one for our customers. So all of that IT infrastructure basically that you have to commit to maintaining Flexi is now shifted to us and to Microsoft's cloud. So you're not responsible for keeping this stuff up and running. And now you're paying a vendor, Flexi, to be responsible for that. And that allows your staff to stay focused on the duties they were hired to, more around infrastructure, more around the operational side of the business. All right. So no IT maintenance. This is what a typical on-prem Flexi deployment looks like architecturally, with multiple servers, databases, thick clients, thin client workstations, and it gets completely simplified if you shift to the cloud. So it goes from something like that to something like this. Okay, obviously a much simpler infrastructure. All these servers go away. You don't have to deal with them anymore. And with that comes a lower total cost, right? Because you're offloading from a CapEx model to an OpEx model. And it's a pay-as-you-go subscription. I mean, we all, subscribe to Netflix or, uh, uh, Hulu or whatever, your phone, even your phone, those are subscriptions. So it's pay-as-you-go, and it just makes organizations much more agile and able to make changes quickly because you're not burdened by all of this CapEx. All right. And because it's operating, it's operational expenditures, and you buy as you need, then you aren't over-investing. You aren't investing in things that you're foreseeing that you need in the future. All right. The third reason would be automatic software updates. So I see a lot of the names on the attendee list. I see there's quite a few that are in the IT realm within our customers, and so you guys may have been through some different upgrade cycles with Flexi in the past. Well, you won't have to deal with that anymore. So, and you won't have to deal with, and if you're in the finance side, you won't have to deal with the cost of it either. So the typical cost of upgrading a Flexi on-premise is around $15,000 in services and about 40 of your IT hours. That's the average cost to upgrade Flexi. And so if you're doing that, let's say every other year, right, that's going to add up. If you move to the cloud, that completely goes away. There's no cost to upgrade. We do all of the upgrades for you. We don't need to involve your IT at all. The only involvement you may have is there will be a window of testing that you're going to want to do when we migrate to a new version to test out some integrations and play with the new functionality. So there are significant hard cost savings by moving to the cloud, which essentially will pay for the subscription service by itself. All right, reason number 4, no retraining. So your on-premise instance of Flexi or UI of Flexi is exactly the same as it is in the cloud. It's the exact same solution. It's just deployed in a different way. So the transition from your end user's perspectives is going to be seamless, from their day-to-day productivity. They're just going to log in slightly differently. You're going to go to a web browser and log in from a web browser, which will open up their application. It'll look exactly like it does today. Well, it may look different if you're on an older version of Flexi because you'll be upgraded instantly to the newest version. But for all intents and purposes, a lot of users don't even realize they're operating in the cloud, much like if you were using Office 365 for Word and Excel. Running in the cloud looks exactly the same as it does on your desktop. So smooth transition for the end users. All right, number 5, 24/7 remote access. And I should say 24/7 remote access that you don't have to maintain or manage. All right, so I bet a lot of the folks on this call are probably working remotely today, even today. It's been an unprecedented shift. You're seeing large corporations like HP and Oracle moving their headquarters from California to Texas and reducing those headquarter sizes because they're going to a more remote work culture. So with Flexi in the cloud, you will always be able to access the application from anywhere on just about any device even. Like if you really wanted to, you could enter journals or invoices on your phone because it's completely in the cloud and platform independent. So you can access it from anywhere on any device. There's no software that's local. So if I need to move from one workstation to another, if I'm hot desking, anything like that, we can do that. It does support multi-factor authentication. And you can also do IP address filtering so that perhaps if somebody is working remote, you want them to have some additional layers of security. Fully encrypted at rest and in transit, and 99.9% uptime. So it's a very secure remote deployment option. And I'll just give you one other example. So we had a client that moved to the cloud and then got hit with ransomware. And if you guys have ever had to deal with that, it is a mess. It's a total nightmare. There's not really much you can do. I mean, you either pay the ransom or you rebuild. And so with Flexi in the cloud, though, it's completely insulated from that. So if you get hit with something like a virus or ransomware or anything like that, it's not going to affect the operations of your accounting department. So it's a lot safer and more secure. All right, last one here, and I'm going to have David kind of chime in a little bit, which is about expanded support. So David is the cloud services manager. As I was saying before, he kind of acts as an extension of your IT department in a sense, and he has a team of people dedicated to supporting the cloud environment. So David, maybe you could talk a little bit about what your team does and how you help the customers.
Yeah, sure. So we're a dedicated team. We work in conjunction with the current help desk and support team that supports you today on your on-prem solution. However, we are dedicated to supporting the cloud environment as far as Azure engineers, maintaining it, patching, upgrades, and troubleshooting any cloud-specific application issues or problem it may be. You, as far as the customer, you work with the same support team. So once you're implemented and you're in production in the cloud, you call the same support number every day that you do today. Same individuals you work with today supporting the application will support you in the cloud. If there is a infrastructure or cloud specific issue, they will work directly with us, the cloud team, to resolve your issue and make any adjustments or configurations that need to be changed to resolve your issue. There's absolutely no worries. You don't have to work with your IT team. Your IT team can concentrate on core infrastructure items and not supporting your application. We manage infrastructure completely. As Spencer has stated, we are fully in the Azure cloud. It is a dedicated cloud environment and tenancy for our cloud solution. It's not integrated with any of our corporate networks or anybody else's corporate network. So it is fully secure, isolated, firewalled, and managed by us. We do take advantage of all the benefits of the Azure cloud. So we have a primary data center on the East Coast and everything in real time, databases, VMs, all our data is replicated to the West Coast in real time. And we have instant failover should we have an issue. Should Microsoft have an issue in their East Coast data center, we fail over to the West Coast data center, and it's pretty much instantaneously. So, that just says that we have all the benefits that we can leverage from Microsoft. We improve our tools as they use them as far as their past services. And we take advantage of that, and my team is continuously researching and working with Microsoft and testing new technology to make sure that we're using the latest and greatest and most secure technology provided to us. The other thing you get when you come to Flexicloud, which is very unique compared to other SaaS solutions out there, especially in the accounting world, we give you two environments, a production environment and a test environment. We call it a test environment, but we handle it as a production environment. It is always there. It meets the same SLAs as your production environment. It's what you will initially use when you go into UAT to do a proof of concept and testing and validation and the system is working and your data is where it's supposed to be. And then that test environment stays there once you migrate to production that you can utilize for training. So if you have new associates that need training within the process, they don't have to do it in production. They can use a test environment. If you're working with workflow and you subscribe to our workflow product and you want to put a new process in place and you want to validate it and test to see how it works, you're welcome to use that test environment, and it's there for you for 24/7 use. We will also utilize it if you have if you go to a new product. So if you don't currently subscribe to ET&E and you want to move to ET&E, we install it in the test environment, you set it up, you test it, you train your individuals, and then we migrate it to production. It is also utilized when we do our upgrades. It is a multi-tenancy environment, so upgrades are part of the contract. You take them as we do it. We usually do 1 to 2 major upgrades a year. And basically we will put it into the test environment. You will be notified that we're upgrading it in the test environment. We would request you run some processes and provide some feedback. It usually sits there for about a week or two, and then we migrate it to production. Everything is communicated, plenty of warnings to do it. So it is a big advantage, same subscription fee, but you do have that second environment.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks, David. If you guys have any questions for David, feel free to, you can put them in the chat. As a matter of fact, before I introduce Jason, our next guest, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end after Jason tells you a little bit about the conversion process. If you guys have questions, this would be a great time for you to enter them now and queue them up in the questions area. I'm sure, I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere you can click to in the Q&A.
It's in the menu at the bottom.
In the menu. Okay. So if you guys have questions, this would be a great time to enter them in. As you're putting those in, I'm going to introduce Jason. So Jason Vanderplug, who a lot of you guys know, has taken a few minutes out of his extremely busy schedule because he is very busy getting a lot of these folks up and running in the cloud. So Jason's going to talk a little bit about what the actual migration process is like from your perspective. You know, what can you expect? So Jason, over to you.
Oh, thanks, Spencer. Hello, everyone. Really appreciate the ability to talk to you all for just a couple minutes. This has been the year of the cloud migration. We've had a lot of clients that were traditionally on-premise that have moved to the cloud. And it's been a lot of fun to get those projects going. We just finished a couple last week, and they're good projects because you already know the software, and it makes it a lot easier than like a regular implementation. So what I wanted to do first is just tell you a quick story about one of our clients who had made the move to Flexicloud. They're a well-known luxury sports car brand that's manufactured and based in Italy. They had not performed an upgrade to the latest version of Flexi in many, many years. So they were on old servers. They weren't getting good support from their IT team, which I know isn't always the case, but sometimes accounting doesn't get all the attention that they need from IT. They really needed to upgrade to receive the latest benefits of Flexi. By leveraging Flexicloud, they were able to migrate and upgrade at the same time. Today, this customer is happily using the Flexi software in the cloud. If you tell them, they'll tell you that the process was smooth and easy. I also like to mention that that particular customer is a public company who has stringent SOX reporting requirements and controls. So that's not a concern. You know, we have very stringent controls ourselves, and we do annual audits, which I'm sure Spencer will touch on a little bit later. Let me tell you a little bit about the process, and I imagine that you're wondering, how does your data get there? We, consider a migration just like any Flexi upgrade project. So we would take a copy of your current Flexi database and upgrade it to the same version that we're running in the cloud. We then configure our test cloud so you and your users can log into the cloud and run reports and compare the data that was imported to make sure the import process worked correctly. After the test migration is complete, the accounting, let's see, sorry. Sorry, I was getting another phone call. After the test migration is complete, the accounting users will have the opportunity to do, formal user acceptance testing. And I know the next big question that you probably have on your mind is, what happens to my integration? Virtually every customer that Flexi works with has integration needs. Integrations for the most part remain the same. There will be no data format changes required on your part. The only minor change is that the method in which the data is imported into the system. In many cases, when a customer is using Flexi on-premises, they're importing files using Windows Explorer. In the case of Flexicloud, those files need to be transferred using a secure FTP. There might be a little bit of setup needed by your IT team, but from the end user perspective, this will not be a big change. Customizations. Because this is a cloud service, we would need to look at each customization and make a determination on how we move forward. What I can say is we have been able to accommodate each situation that has been presented to us. And then, I think the next thing on your mind is, how much is this going to cost me? The good news is that a migration project usually will cost in the same range as an on-premises upgrade. Since there'll be no retraining required, it minimizes the impact on your accounting department. The most important part of any migration project is the people who use the software. Their participation in the process is key. We will work with each of you to determine an estimated cost. Lastly, we just want to talk about timeframes. A typical migration project will last between 4 and 6 weeks, but the time frame is up to you. We also work with you to determine a timeline that will work for your company. Usually we try to do a production upgrade, in an evening or over a weekend, and that would entail shutting down the on-premises software, like on an afternoon or a Friday afternoon. When your staff comes in the next business day, you're ready to work in the cloud. And just last thing, I want to mention one last thing. A lot of customers also use the migration to Flexicloud as an opportunity to implement other modules. So as David indicated earlier, if you didn't have, let's say, e-invoice today, or approval process, that might be a good time to look at implementing that when you move to the cloud. So I hope I answered any questions that came off of, that you might have had, and I'm going to turn it back over to Spencer.
Great, thanks, Jason. All right, so we're going to start wrapping things up. I appreciate everybody that put questions into the Q&A. Looks like a lot of those were answered by the team here. What I'd like to do is just kind of cherry pick a couple of them, and Rob, you can assist as well. There's quite a long list, but I'm going to start off with, there were several questions. I'm just trying to combine some here about, and this will be for David, around upgrades. So you touched on this a little bit, but can you expand a little bit on how upgrades are rolled out? Do people need, what versions will people be on? What if I'm on an old version now? Like, talk a little bit about the upgrade process.
Yeah, sure. So the one thing with the cloud, and I know there was a couple questions in there about, can we not take an upgrade? Can we not move forward with an upgrade? So the one thing about the cloud is it is a multi-tenancy environment. It remains on one version, and it's kept pretty current. I mean, the code base is the same as the on-prem code base, and it's generally released to the public prior to it going to the cloud, so that we can do extra QA testing and verification prior to moving it to the cloud. But once we migrate it to the cloud, basically what happens is you'll get a notification that your test environment is being upgraded. The new version will be applied to the test environment, giving you usually a week to 2 weeks to shake it out, test it, provide feedback, report any critical bugs for your system that may be causing a showstopper. Based on that feedback and that testing and our internal testing, after a week or two, if there's no incompatibilities with the cloud or showstoppers, it then gets applied to production. The current version is 6.3 in the cloud, and that is going to be first quarter moving to 6.3, and then later in 2021, probably sometime at second half of the year, we will be moving to 6.4. So that's the current roadmap for Flexicloud.
Okay, good. And then another line of questioning, David, this will probably be for you as well, on connectivity. So there are just a couple of different questions. I'm just going to kind of mash them together here. So let me just see, where was I? Okay, so if people, can they restrict access? How can people restrict access, like by, can they do it by IP address?
Yeah,
what if we're using Citrix today? And well, let's just start there.
Yeah, so our access is all through an Azure portal page. So you can restrict access to that portal page. We have some customers that don't want members of their team getting to their data from anywhere other than their network. So you can definitely do an IP restriction, which causes anybody coming in from that corporate network only to be able to access the portal pages there. Now keep in mind, it is a shared tenancy environment, so that portal page can be accessed by others. But once you get into your data, that's where the restrictions apply. As far as Citrix, it's I don't have the answer if we have other cloud customers out there on Citrix, because we don't manage the customer's endpoint. You're basically, the Flexi application is basically being accessed through RDP. So any Windows client, you can use a Mac client. You do have to download the remote access client for a Mac client, but you have full access through the gateway to that data. So if you're using a Citrix type desktop, as long as you have a browser, you're going to be able to access the client.
Okay. There were some other questions around connectivity and access. So, I'll just bring up another point here. So something that we are working on bringing out is another form of integration option, or another integration option. So currently, you can integrate to the cloud with APIs. You can do FlexiNet Exchange, file-based data transfers. And then we're working on the data replication option, data replication service as well. So for example, like Sunil, you guys are using TM1. We've got other customers that want to use things like Tableau or some other third-party application that they want to pull Flexi data in that they used to extract or dump out of Flexi into like a data mart or cube. So we're working on and releasing a data replication service that will allow you to pull your data out and put it wherever you want to replicate it to. Because it is and another question was asking about this, it is a public cloud, multi-tenanted, single database. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology technically, but it is a single database that is multi-tenanted, so all customers are technically on this single database. So because of that, we can't just expose people to run queries against the database. Of course, that would be not such a good idea. But you get the benefit of, getting everybody upgraded at the same time and timely. So just wanted to put that out there. All right. I don't see any other. Well, okay, never mind. I take that back. So on database size, and David, this is probably for you. Are there any limits on the total size of the database? And so Jason had answered this, but maybe just talk a little bit about how we manage the database size.
So I mean, it's managed for what you pay. And I don't want to quote numbers because I'll leave that up to the sales team. I think the initial amount is 10 gigabytes, and then based
Correct.
on your size, you can buy increments of database size.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's really, we manage it, we cap it. If you only have 10 gigabytes and you're growing beyond that, then, you have to purchase it. You either have to purge some of your data or you have to purchase a database size increment to allow to allocate more space.
Okay, good. And so those types of things would go through your account executive, who in this case is, let me just quickly introduce Shilpan. So Shilpan Patel is handling a lot of our existing clients these days. He's handling anybody that wants to upgrade to migrate to the cloud. So I put his contact information up here on the screen for you guys if you want to follow up and have other questions or want to pursue that migration to the cloud. And Shilpan also can provide any of the due diligence documents if you guys need SOC reports, if you need specs for the cloud. If he can also do an evaluation for you comparing what you're paying today in terms of your ongoing maintenance versus what the cloud costs would be. So Shilpan will be the main point of contact. So Shilpan, say hi.
Look forward to speaking with many of you. Sorry about that. I was
Right.
on mute.
Yeah, Shilpan's probably hunkering down. There's a huge snowstorm coming in the Northeast. Well, folks, thank you so much again. It's great to see a lot of familiar names, I guess I shouldn't say faces, on the webinar. We really appreciate you guys as a customer, and attending these webinars.